It's good to be with you all this evening. I want to just give my thanks to the Methodist Church for hosting this conversation. I don't think there's been a time as urgent as this to have this conversation, and I want to thank the attendees for giving their time to listen and to learn and to engage. As was mentioned, right now as we speak, the fragile ceasefire in Gaza has collapsed. Since Sunday night, the Israeli army has been carrying out renewed strikes on Gaza. Reports now in the last few hours confirm that ground forces are reoccupying parts of the Strip, stopping people from moving between the north and the south, escalating the devastation that has already taken over 5,000 Palestinian men, women, and children since in the last 18 months, 16 months. Entire neighborhoods have been wiped out, families buried under the rubble. For us as Palestinians, these past months have been catastrophic, but they're not an exception. They're part of decades-long reality of occupation and displacement. And so to talk about Sumud in these and steadfastness in this time is somewhat difficult. It has become both a lifeline, but also a burden that we carry. I want to reflect on what Sumud means, what steadfastness means, not just as an abstract idea or a romanticized notion of resilience, but as a lived experience of being steadfast. I also want to challenge how sometimes it is framed, particularly by those who live outside of Palestine. I think Sumud is powerful, but it must not become an excuse for inaction. So I'll briefly touch on three key aspects, and then also want to keep time for Q&A. First, I think Sumud should be viewed as an active act. Sumud is sometimes described as simply staying on the land, enduring oppression without giving up. But Sumud is about more than just survival. It's about taking active steps to resist dehumanization. And one of the most powerful examples that I found in scripture of Sumud is the persistent widow in Luke 18. Jesus tells us about a widow who persistently demands justice from a corrupt judge who neither feared God nor cared what people thought. We have many of those in our world today. The widow refuses to accept injustice as inevitable, so she keeps coming back day after day, insisting on what is rightfully hers. Eventually, the judge relents, not because he becomes just, but because her persistence forces him to act. Similarly, I've been reflecting on the story of Rizpah, whose story we can find in 2 Samuel 21. When her two boys are killed unjustly, we won't get into the details, but when that happens, she stages a protest. She refuses to move. She sits for months on end, protecting the bodies of her sons until they are treated with dignity and buried properly. This is what Sumud looks like: relentless insistence on justice, even when the system is built to deny it. As Palestinians, we have sought to embody this type of Sumud for decades. So we can look at families in the West Bank who rebuild homes that have been demolished again and again. We can look at farmers in Gaza who continue to plant trees on land that they will know will probably be destroyed in the next airstrike. About children continuing their education despite their schools and universities being destroyed. About parents taking in orphan children and caring for them as their own. So I just want to my first point is about Sumud being this active act that we take part in as a process, as an active process that we engage in. Second, as was mentioned in the introduction, my research is with young people. And so I'm usually paying special attention to what young people are doing and establishing as their idea of Sumud. And I think Palestinian young people are redefining what Sumud means. Young Palestinians have inherited this legacy of Sumud, but we're also expanding and redefining what Sumud means. So a 20-year-old Palestinian today has never known a reality without war, occupation, or displacement. Every generation before them has told them, hold on, be steadfast. But this generation is asking new questions. What does Sumud look like in this day and age? How do we remain steadfast with these new challenges that are emerging? And how do we communicate our Sumud with the outside world? Why must pain be turned into a symbol of resilience rather than a demand for change, for people to take action? So Palestinian youth are taking Sumud beyond its traditional definition. I'll just give you a few examples of how I think this is happening. For example, through social media, young people are telling their story and their people's story without any filters, without any mediums of traditional media. They're ensuring that their voices are heard despite media erasure and hiding. They are getting informed about what happens in different parts of Palestine, so people in the West Bank can know what's happening in Gaza. People inside Israel, Palestinians inside Israel, can know what's happening in Gaza and the West Bank. But we're also getting informed about what happens around the world, seeking to establish new forms of solidarity, such as the solidarity that we have with South Africa, the solidarity we have with indigenous people around the world. And young people let down by institutions are also establishing parallel systems of support to address needs that are not met by formal bodies. So there are all of these media parallel system and also a support system that is parallel to the formal one. And for those who are not in the land, second or third generation immigrants, Palestinians elsewhere, not inside Palestine, are reclaiming their Palestinian identity, learning about their history, and seeking to use the spaces they are in to advocate for human rights in different ways in Palestine. So Sumud for this generation is no longer just about surviving oppression. It's about building a future where Sumud is no longer needed, where this superhuman resilience is no longer needed. And here I want to bring a note of caution when we talk about Sumud. One of the most painful realities that we face is how the world admires Palestinian steadfastness and resilience, while sometimes doing little to change the conditions that require it. The danger is when Sumud is romanticized and Palestinians are described as superhumans. We hear sometimes, often well-intentionally, look at how they continue to live despite the horrors that they face. But I think the question we need to ask is, why does the world expect Palestinians to keep proving their humanity through suffering? I think as Palestinians, we don't want to be admired for our ability to endure bombs, displacement, and starvation. We want people to act so that Palestinian children no longer have to be resilient. And I take this from a brilliant piece by Malaka Shweikh, who has written on this. It's called Against Resilience. And she explores this idea that resilience sometimes can be weaponized and used kind of as a way to keep the status quo rather than change the very circumstances that require people to be resilient. And lastly, I want to ask, can Sumud bring justice? Can it bring healing? The widow in Jesus' parable that I mentioned did not receive justice because the judge became good. She received it because she refused to be silent. She did not relent. Similarly, in the story of Rizpah, Rizpah's relentless vigil forced the king to act and ultimately led to the healing of the land. Their Sumud is an example for us to emulate. What does this mean for Palestine? I think that passive existence will not end oppression. Palestinian Sumud must be met with global solidarity, and I'm so thankful for my brother here from South Africa. Justice will not come because Palestinians have suffered enough. It will come because people of conscience, especially Christians, refuse to remain silent. So we, as Palestinians, we do not ask for your charity. We're asking for your action, to stand for what is right. And may we all embody Sumud, not just by witnessing injustice, but by working to end it.